Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
I'm your co-host, Rich Gear, here with you. And tonight's subject, we have a couple of lists here, Doug. Basically, failed predictions of the evolutionary theory. What do we want to call the show again, Doug?
Failed evolutionary predictions.
Pretty close. Okay, I got it pretty close. But we're gonna start. You got a consensus here, and then we got a list of other things. So I'm kind of ready to get into this, Doug. So why don't you read off what that first premise is? I think.
We had a little bit of a poll that was taken on the CRSNet, which
Right.
is the Creation Research Society's list server of scientists.
Right.
And he came up with a list of what proofs or evidences that evolutionists rely upon. And he asked us to rank the top three of them so that he could get an idea of which ones were really the ones that they used the most.
The ones that people use to try to
Right.
justify why they believe in evolution. Is that what we're getting at?
And I'll give you the list, and then we'll discuss some of them. And then we got.
Out there might want to.
And I've got about a bunch of lists as other things that we've listed as well of things that evolutionists have relied upon as their proofs. But when you dig down deep in them, they fail in their logic. And we talked last week about logical fallacies and how to recognize them. And so here's a few of them, Rich.
All right.
The first one is. All those scientists cannot be wrong.
Right.
And as if this is a convincing evidence for evolution.
But you know, in a world we live in, Doug, with this postmodern world, consensus morality, consensus science, consensus, that's pretty much how people operate. If everybody believes in it, or the majority, they tend, and this is not anything really, in that sense, really not postmodern. This is pretty typical of human beings.
Yeah, it's the fallacy of the majority determining the truth. Vox populi, vox deus, or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. We talked about that last week. And the thing about it is, Doug, it is hard because most of us, as we are social beings, and we want to belong to. And there's a comfort zone, Doug, in belonging where the majority is. There just is. Even if that majority may be wrong, which in the realms of science as well as other arenas.
Even the majority is one, like the Supreme Court, you know.
Yeah, I know. That's even one. Well,
another subject.
Yeah, that's another subject. We won't get into that right now. But the point of it is, I understand that reasoning, but it's not a good excuse basically, it's a lazy way of thinking, but it's pretty typical. And I just heard that the other day at a funeral. Well, all these scientists believe this. And I go, and they're convinced the world is 15.6, 15.5 billion years old. I said, well, so we have consensus science? Well, no, but they can't all be wrong. I says, no, they are. A lot of them, but a lot of them can be wrong, and it's happened in the past many times, as we'll get into it with some of the other lists.
Yeah, did you see that debate between Ted Cruz and the Sierra Club?
No, I did not see that. I heard about it, but I didn't see it.
He was giving all this data that was coming from the satellites that global warming wasn't really working, and the guy from Sierra Club says 97% of the scientists all say that global warming is a fact, and he just kept repeating that. And using the voice of authority, you have the authority scientist being the authority.
Well, we've talked about that, Doug, because in our secular world, the scientists are the high priests of authority today, not the priests of the Catholic Church like they were in the Middle Ages, but the scientists are. So if a lot of them say that, it must be true. Sorry about that, Doug, but I didn't mean to cut you off. But yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
You did mean to cut me off. That's exactly what you did.
I did. I was good at it. Anyway, go ahead.
The next one is about the cosmic background temperature predicted by the Big Bang Theory compels an evolutionist explanation. Well,
it's a little more esoteric, so explain that.
Well, I'm not going to really get into that because I'm not really qualified to deal with that one. But,
I mean, not even a nutshell thing?
Well, I can, it's something about, they detect this 3-degree Kelvin radiation from some black body out in space, and so that's supposedly prove that it was a Big Bang that started everything.
Okay.
And they sort of go back to certain billions of years age of the universe, and so if you want to run your time machine backwards and get to that point so you can actually scientifically prove that. That'd be a good thing to try.
Yeah, what the original radiation was or whatever.
Exactly. So that's
It's the same problem you have with the carbon dating or the radiometric dating stuff. You're making certain assumptions that there's really no way to fully prove. Anyway, go ahead.
right.
So,
We creationists have a cosmology that explains this stuff. So I don't think there's if you want to get into that, that's something that we have some materials that you can look at. Invoking miracles is not scientific and is forbidden and constitutes cheating in the scientific realm.
cannot allow a supernatural foot in the door.
Right, okay. Enough said about that one. DNA similarities of humans and chimps and ancestor trees based upon DNA. Now, we have a fellow working for Institute for Creation Research. His name is Jeffrey Tompkins. And he's really doing a yeoman's job in analyzing this particular thing of the human DNA and chimp similarity.
Yeah.
And basically what it gets down to is if you slice and dice up the DNA molecule and rearrange it and enough and line things up, you can get a little bit of a similarity between the two, you know.
But you could do that with a daffodil. I mean, you know, everything has got DNA in it. You know what I'm saying?
Is that where we get our bloomin' idiots from?
That's where we get our bloomin' idiots from. Yeah. The bloomin' onion at Outback. You know, we were talking about that earlier. Yeah, Doug. I mean, I didn't realize it was quite so ridiculous. But I mean, I guess I've always thought, and I give it sort of a different thing. I says they tell us how close we are to chimpanzees, and in the next breath, they'll tell you how different we are from Neanderthal man.
Right. Yeah.
And Neanderthal is way closer to us, even in an evolution.
Yeah,
than
Neanderthal's human, but
But we're far away from Neanderthal man. I go, which is a chick? I mean, come on. This is they give you two scenarios, neither of them which explains anything, and both of them can be doctored in ways you'd just be amazingly. It would cause a lot of problems. Anyway, so what's the next one, Doug?
Okay, yeah, we're going to do quick hits here.
Okay, quick hits.
The next one is the icons of evolution, like ape to man drawings. Like you have about 5 to 7 figures in this little sequence, and you line these people up, and each looking more human from left to right.
Powerful artistic license. As an artist, I know what that is, and it's really that we've done that many times. Talk about in fact, right now it seems to be almost like instead of evolutionary tree, you got evolutionary bushes. You know, you got all these side branches. Nothing hooks in. Australopithecine doesn't hook into the direct ancestry of man now. It's on a side branch, and you know. Yeah,
it's kind of fun to follow this stuff. You know, every September we get the new National Geographic.
The newest evolutionary.
Just for our kiddies to prove to them that their ancestors were apes.
And then when they find out it doesn't really work in their theory, it quietly goes away and you never hear about it again.
Right, yeah.
But they've ruined another generation of young, what's the one radio commentator, young skulls full of mush, you know?
Right, yeah.
But anyway, what's the next one, Doug?
Next one is all about dinosaurs.
Oh.
So we've talked about this at length in the biblical explanation for them, and so rewind a few of our previous shows on the subject. We've got dozens of them.
A lot of shows on the dinosaurs, yes, and the extinct reptiles, flying reptiles, and sea reptiles. Anyway, okay, what's the other one?
Okay, number 7, antibiotic resistance mutations of bacteria to neutralize antibiotics.
Well, we've talked about that a lot too.
And
what in a nutshell, Doug? Because we're going to simplify this, Doug, but I'm saying the fact is when we deal with the antibiotic-resistant bacteria, a lot of it has to do not with evolutionary complexity getting more complex. It's they're losing information.
Right. Yeah.
Evolution, for it to be true, this is a little esoteric, but for those who've watched the show for more than a year or two, it's for evolution, macroevolution to be true. It's not merely change over time. You have to add something to the genetic material to the genome that wasn't there before. In an antibiotic-resistant bacteria, they're either shuffling something around, but in a lot of cases, you're losing specifically the mechanism to absorb nutrients, is what happens.
Yeah, basically what you're doing is with the mutation that it doesn't let in the antibiotic through the cell wall. It's sort of like if you go to the lock of your door and fill the keyhole full of solder.
Yeah.
You're going to keep a whole lot of people out. It's going to keep you out too.
Yeah, it's going to keep you out too.
But
and that's the thing, because I talked to a doctor about this one. I said, why don't we just close the hospital down and let them lie fallow for a year and let the regular bacteria come in? He says, because wouldn't it outcompete these bacteria in the hospitals are a lot of times very weak.
Yeah.
They're not very strong, but in a sterile environment, and if they get in your body, they can be very virulent, but they're actually weaker bacteria because they can't absorb nutrients like the normal bacteria would be. And the normal bacteria, but they also can't absorb the poisons, the antibiotic, okay? So they thrive in this kind of an environment.
And they create the poisons too because they're mutated.
That's right.
Like bug Clostridium tetani.
Yeah.
Which causes tetanus, and the normal Clostridium is a normal gut flora of your that's normally in your body, but the tetani strain is what causes tetanus, and it just exudes a poison. And so if you get tetanus,
and think about this, Doug. We talk about the DNA stuff. It's like if you had a book. Obviously, you're not going to get killed. You have this wonderful, great Charles Dickens book or a Shakespeare book or even just whatever. Suddenly, you mix all the letters up. Well, you're not going to die, but you're not going to get the benefits of the story. Well, that's what the bacteria does. And when you twist it up and lose genetic information or mutate, you're going to end up having it's a lot more damaging. And that is not only are you missing out on the good things that this thing are, you're going to have harmful stuff. You're going to have bad results with the bacteria. So I don't know, maybe it was a poor analogy, but it was kind of the first one that came to my mind. So what else we got, Doug?
Okay, here number 8. It's all about natural selection. It works. You have Darwin's finches, the peppered moth, and then you have embryo recapitulation, and these are still all being used in the evolutionary literature as the evidence. And people get this. If they're uninformed and they're being taught this and they're supposed to learn it and they buy into it.
Well, the Darwin's finches, creationists don't have an argument with that. We really, I mean, in fact, of course, a lot of times you find out the finches, when they're allowed to breed without certain isolated conditions, that a lot of them tend to breed back to their original phenotype or original, they tend to go back to their normal. They haven't changed over time into something brand new, and they were always finches to start with. Peppered moths, creationists never had really an issue with that, and even that turned out to be kind of a fraud. The guy taped them or tapped them onto the tree, and I'm not saying the guy was trying to do fraud. Maybe he was, I don't know, but I don't have a problem with him trying to show an example, and artificially doing it, but he didn't tell you that's what he did, at least not for a long time. Now, the embryonic recapitulation, now that was an out-and-out fraud. That's totally been wrong. In other words, the idea that you talk about recapitulation, ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, is that what you're talking about?
Right.
The Ernst Haeckel thing. And that, in the same breath as the first two, we object to quite a bit. Number one, it's been proven to be a fraud for 100 years. Still used in some textbooks, although most of them have gotten rid of them, but they'll still bring it out from time to time. It was one of the big arguments they used in the abortion, trying to get it passed years ago in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. You're going through the whole evolutionary cycle in the womb, which is totally false. And they were false drawings to start with. Okay, Doug, what else we got?
Well, number 9 is the universe and the earth are extremely old, billions of years, so evolution must be true.
I like Ken Ham's thing on that. Were you there?
Right.
So, okay, go. What, you gonna say something on that, Doug?
Well, they use the various mechanisms to prove that, but often they start out with evolution being true, and then they assume that it's millions of years old because evolution needs it, and then they come up with logical sequences to bolster up that idea. And there are a number of things that yield an old age based upon like radioisotope dating and things of that sort. But we know why that is the case. And
I find that very interesting, Doug, when you deal with radiometric dating. They're only valid when they get the dates they a priori assume to be true. If you get too old of a date or too young of a date, they throw them out as contamination. Well, then how do I know any of it's real? You know, I mean, we could validate how long a half-life is, or how fast one thing decays into something else based on certain things, but we can't predict or assume or guarantee that rate is never going to change, shift, speed up, or slow down. We can't do that. In fact, we know that those things, especially things like potassium argon and uranium lead, we've talked about those things, Doug, which things can leach off with water. Water action causes problems. We've dealt with that in our shows a lot. So, you know, and those are just two things.
Yeah, again, rewind to some of our old shows. We talked about a lot of these different things.
All out there.
Now, I like number 10 because number 10 is actually the reason why I'm a creationist.
Oh, is it really?
And it's Origin of Life Experiments by Stanley Miller and others.
Oh, yeah, Life in the Test Tube. Okay.
And that's exactly what I was trying to do when I was in high school and college.
One step farther than you.
Yeah, I was trying to take it the next step and combine amino acids to create proteins. And when I found out the chemistry behind that, and I didn't get far with it. It got some brown sticky goo.
Yeah, you learn very quickly that was not going to work. Yeah. See, empirical science is the real problem with a lot of this theoretical, historical, evolutionary jibber jabber we get, because when it comes up to the actual light of real empirical evidence, it oftentimes falls down on the job, and that's sort of like maybe our segue into the next thing here.
Well, I was going to give the results of their poll.
Oh, okay. Do that first. Okay.
They had 34 votes for number 1, which was all those scientists couldn't be wrong.
All those scientists couldn't be wrong.
And I think that was the top vote getter. Number 9, they had 13, which was the universe and Earth is extremely old.
Okay.
Number 10 and number 3 had 10 votes, and that was invoking miracles is not scientific.
Okay.
Then number 8 had 8 votes, and that's natural selection works.
Yeah, and as I say, we don't have any problem with natural selection. We've dealt with that many times, Doug. And I think about that natural selection. What does it do, Doug? It rearranges what's already there. Sometimes the environment can open up or cause a gene that was already there to function that didn't function before. Environment does work on the genome. Jerry Bergman, some of his experiments talk about that. That was a fascinating thing, but it doesn't add anything to the genome that wasn't there.
Number 4, DNA similarities of humans and chimps. That one had a few votes too. But anyway, the rest of them didn't come out as high as those 4 of them, 5 of them.
Yeah, that's usually the way it is, you know.
And so you know, dealing with the very first one seems to be the whole thing of appeal to authority of the scientists.
Yep. And
that's what is going on, is that there is an intimidation factor of the lab coat. Yeah. And the letters behind the name,
society, they are.
Yeah, and so that I think is the big intimidation factor that is going on with evolutionary theory. Now, it is something that is an issue, and we talked about the logical fallacy of thinking that you know, you need to have scientific evidence being the final authority rather than people, you know, what people say about the scientific
evidence. But Doug, the problem with that is the evidence. You and I know that really creationists have said this for many years. We have the same DNA to look at as the evolutionary science. We have the same fossil record as the paleontologists. We have the same you know, atmosphere, cosmology. We have the same things to look at. We can look at the same red shifts, blue shifts, and yet we will come up with different interpretations. No matter what you do, there's going to be a filter.
It's the fallacy of false cause.
Yeah.
which is the idea that you take this whole body of evidence here,
Right.
but you come to the wrong conclusion concerning it because you've got your own biases and filter that goes through it.
That's perfectly human, Doug, but we have to be, you have to acknowledge that and do our best to try to alleviate that, or at least acknowledge that it's there, and then say, look, this I have to speculate. I think this is true. I think Genesis does it good. So does ICR. Many of them say, look, our a priori assumption is the Bible is correct. Okay, that's our bias. Okay.
Now let's get into the failed evolutionary predictions.
Well, we won't do that because but I'm saying it's okay to acknowledge that you're a priori an atheist or that you're a secularist.
That's right.
But you have to understand you got filters that the evidence may not be there. Well, okay. That being said, then let's go into what you're saying. That's the list of the segue into what predictions have evolutionists made that have not come to pass. You know?
Okay, and it started out with Darwin's saying that we're not finding that the fossil record is really supporting his evidence, and he was his theory, and he said that I'm trying to come up with missing links and things of that sort to prove his theory. Well,
what was his fallback position?
And his idea was that time is going to fix this. We're going to kick the can down the road for future experimentation, and
they'll find what we need.
We'll find what we need, and that's obviously a fallacy. And there was one evolutionist that said we find that there are even fewer examples of missing links than what Darwin had in his day. Darwin didn't have any.
Yeah, wow. So we have negative examples now. Anyway, yeah.
And here's another failed evolutionary prediction, and this was actually Darwin actually believed in Lamarckianism. The idea that the giraffe stretched out his neck and it got longer and longer and longer. He believed in use and habit, and that explains
the genius in his book is he spent most of his book really dealing with natural selection, and that was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And he minimalized his belief in Lamarckianism. But it was there in his writings. You could tell it's there, and it just.
I like your term for it, Malarkianism.
Malarkianism, that's what I call it. Malarkianism. It's like if you cut the rat's tail off, the next 100 generations you have short-tailed rats. No, still long-tailed rats. Okay, what's the next one?
I'm going to skip a few of these.
Yeah, there's 25 of these, and we're not going to go. Maybe online if you want to go to the article, go and post these up, and you can look at them. We'll see.
I'm going to talk about the tree of life being with the common ancestor.
Okay.
And so we have all these branches coming out. Out here on the tips of the branches are the leaves, and these are the species of today. But you have these little lines that come in towards the trunk, and
common ancestor.
You have the common ancestor,
right? Yep.
And that's some bacterium of back in the primordial soup.
To me, you got to go farther than that. You got to go before the organism. You got to go to a rock.
Right. Yeah.
You got to get spontaneous generation somewhere, somehow. But let's that aside. You're right. So you got this one bacteria.
And another failed evolutionary prediction is that primordial soup. I asked Ian Juby if he served that on his travels. The Dino Burgers, primordial soup, and chocolate chimp cookies.
Yeah, chocolate chip cookies. Well, yeah. But the thing about it is, Doug, the primordial soup. That was. Did that come up? How early was that? I know that the Miller-Urey experiment.
Well, Darwin himself talked about the warm little pond.
Oh, did he? Okay, the ooze that would come out of there.
And then you have people like Oparin, who talked about the chemistry of this primordial pond and it was Stanley Miller and those tried to actually do the empirical science on it.
The nutshell you want to get out of this is we have all these creatures But the tree itself is an artifice. It's an artistic drug, and they've said it very often, even evolutionists. The gaps between this one and this one are almost always, they're systematic and almost always large. In other words, they make you think like everything's connected, but the reality is when you get ready, you start, the devil's in the details, Doug, and when you get into the details, you find there's no connectivity between this creature and this supposed earlier one that lived. There's no link between them. There's all these gaps between them, and they're huge gaps. Big ones.
I think we have time for only one more.
I know, we're ready.
And the last one is uniformitarianism.
Uniformitarianism, yeah.
And that's the idea that everything just took millions of years, a long period of time, one sand grain at a time, laid down all these different layers of rock over millions and millions of years.
The present is the key to the past. Everything you see, the way it operates today is the way it's always operated. Now we know that's not true, but
and it's a doctrine. If you want to just go into that whole geological idea, go back to some of our previous shows on this.
Yeah, we have a lot of we have a lot of them out there, but
about upside down rocks. South Mountain I was just mentioning in Phoenix. Is Precambrian on top and Tertiary on the bottom. That's the whole Phanerozoic.
Mount St. Helens scenario where many rock layers were laid down virtually overnight. Within a few hours, you had 400 feet of sedimentary layers built up. It doesn't take you millions of years. The
Lewis Overthrust in Glacier National Park is Precambrian on top, Cretaceous on the bottom.
The one in South Carolina, South Carolina, we stayed at the one cabin. We had upside down rock strata down there, and what was it?
No, we're talking about the Smoky Mountains.
Smoky Mountains, yeah, Smoky Mountains, yeah.
Yeah, that's not that's North Carolina.
Okay, you wanted Carolina.
And Tennessee, yeah.
Tennessee, yeah.
But anyway, in many, many different places in the world, the geology doesn't match what the evolutionists expect.
In fact, the uniformitarian table that you see in this pretty books about like the tree, it basically is a nice artistic fiction because it really doesn't exist any place in the world. There may be a couple little small spots they might kind of try to make it up, but it doesn't really exist anywhere. It just looks nice on paper.
Well, this is a little bit of a smorgasbord of sampling of failed evolutionary predictions, and we hope you enjoyed our show tonight. We'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.